Every legend hides a truth. Every myth whispers a warning. Welcome to the Mythic Hour, where the forgotten gods and cursed stories return to life. The Nile ran black beneath the twilight, its surface shivering with ripples of gold and crimson light. Along the riverbank, priests prepared torches, their chanting voices rolling like drums across the waters. The annual feast of renewal was meant to bring life, yet that night it carried only the scent of blood. The body had been found in the sacred grove near Heliopolis. A high priest, beloved and feared, now lay broken at the roots of a sycamore tree. His throat had been cut clean, a line so precise it spoke not of rage but of intent. Around him were scattered votive offerings, smashed in the dirt, amulets of Horus, beads of lapis lazuli, jars of unguent spilled like entrails. The priests trembled in silence. For them, this was more than a killing. It was desecration, a direct insult to the gods themselves. When the news reached the temple of Isis, a shudder passed through the halls. Isis, mistress of magic, wife of Osiris, mother of Horus, and guardian of wisdom, was summoned. Mortals could not solve this crime. They whispered that the gods themselves must intervene, or Egypt would fall into chaos. And so Isis came. She entered the grove veiled, her robes flowing like moonlit water. The torches flared higher as if the fire longed to touch her presence. Even the priests bowed low, pressing their foreheads into the soil, for Isis was not merely a goddess of motherhood and fertility. She was the keeper of secrets, the one who had tricked Ra himself into revealing his hidden name. If anyone could pierce the shadow surrounding this death, it was she. She stood before the corpse, unflinching. Her gaze was sharp as obsidian, her breath steady. With one hand she touched the sycamore tree, and with the other, she brushed the air above the priest's chest. "The soul has fled," she murmured, "but not far. He lingers, unsettled." A ripple of fear spread among the witnesses. To linger after death meant the spirit was restless, trapped, or worse, denied passage. Only a violent wrong could bind a Ka so tightly. Isis knelt in the dirt. She studied the wound, the soil, the broken offerings. Then she closed her eyes. Her voice, low and melodic, carried into the night. "Who has spilled the blood of the devoted? Who dares to profane the sacred grove? Come forth, shadow, and speak." For a moment, the grove was still. Then the air grew colder. A faint shape flickered above the corpse, the priest's spirit, wavering like a flame in the wind. His mouth opened, but no sound came. His eyes rolled back, and the specter writhed as if bound in invisible chains. One of the younger priests gasped. "He cannot speak, great lady. He is silenced." "Not silenced," Isis corrected softly. "Strangled by a power greater than his own." She rose, her expression unreadable. This was no mortal's crime alone. There is sorcery here, and the hand that wielded it sought not only death, but secrecy. The crowd murmured in dread. If magic had been used, it was not ordinary malice. It was a war waged through the unseen currents of the divine. A priestess approached Isis, trembling. "Lady, what shall we do?" Isis's eyes lifted toward the horizon where the stars bled into the darkness. "We begin where all truth begins, with silence broken. The dead must speak. And until they can, I will hunt the living." Her words sent ripples through the gathering. Some priests looked relieved, others terrified. For if Isis sought the killer, it meant no one, not even among the priesthood, was above suspicion. That night, the body was carried to the temple. Ritual fires burned, incense rose in coils, and hymns were sung to guide the soul. Yet Isis did not join in prayer. She walked the corridors of the temple like a hawk, her mind tightening around the clues she had already gathered. The wound, too clean, too perfect. It suggested discipline, training, someone skilled with ritual blades. The offerings, smashed, not stolen. This was no robbery. It was symbolic, a deliberate desecration. The silenced spirit, evidence of another's magic, powerful and dangerous. Her thoughts sharpened. This was not random. This was a message. At dawn, she summoned the high council of priests and priestesses. They assembled in the hall of pillars, the air heavy with fear. Each wore linen garments white as bone, each carried amulets for protection. But Isis needed none. Her power was her shield. She looked upon them with calm authority. Last night, one among us was murdered. His ka is bound, his voice stolen. This was no act of chance, no quarrel of men. This was ritual. And ritual means intent. One of you, or one under your command, has brought darkness into these halls. A murmur spread, protests rising, but Isis silenced them with a raised hand. I will find the hand that killed. I will uncover the power that bound his soul. And when I do, the Nile itself will bear witness to the truth. No lie can live in my presence. Her gaze swept over the assembly. Some met her eyes. Others faltered, shifting uncomfortably. Already, guilt was breathing in the chamber. And so it began. The goddess who had once pieced together the torn body of Osiris now set herself upon a new task, to piece together the truth behind a single cut throat. The first murder Egypt had ever known. And Isis, goddess of cunning and wisdom, would not rest until the shadow of the killer was dragged into the light. The temple of Heliopolis did not sleep after the murder. Priests kept watch through the night, carrying oil lamps through the colonnades, whispering prayers under their breath. Fear stalked their footsteps. They knew the goddess was searching, and Isis did not search in vain. When dawn spread its gold across the desert, Isis returned to the grove. Alone. She dismissed the guards, the priests, the mourners. Only silence accompanied her, broken by the rustle of palm fronds and the caw of distant birds. The sycamore tree still bore its crimson stain. Flies circled lazily in the warming air. The ground remained unsettled, though the body had been carried away. Isis lowered herself to her knees, pressing her palm to the soil. Her eyes closed, her lips moved silently. For mortals, the ground was only dirt and stone. For Isis, every grain was a vessel of memory. Slowly the earth whispered back. Images bloomed in her mind. A shadowed figure moving with certainty, the glint of a blade, the fall of a body. But the images wavered, veiled, as though someone had cloaked them deliberately. Clever, Isis whispered, but not clever enough. She reached into her robes and drew forth a vial of dark liquid oil from the lotus, mixed with her own breath, enchanted to pierce veils of deceit. She poured it over the roots of the sycamore, and the earth shivered. This time, the vision sharpened. The killer wore linen, the kind of ceremonial garment any priest might wear. His face was hidden, obscured not by chance but by magic. A deliberate glamour, a veil against divine sight. Yet two details escaped the spell's perfection: a hand, scarred across the knuckles, and a faint golden ring bearing the falcon of Horus. Isis opened her eyes. Her thoughts narrowed. A priest of Horus. She rose, brushing soil from her hands. Already the threads were weaving together. The slain priest had served Ra, the sun god. His death, at the hands of a Horus priest, suggested more than rivalry. It suggested rebellion, perhaps even treachery within the divine order. But Isis knew better than to leap to judgment. Appearances deceived, lies grew thickest in temples. She returned to the sanctum, where the corpse lay shrouded in linen. Priests hovered nervously as Isis entered. She lifted the shroud without hesitation. The wound gleamed still, unnaturally preserved, as though time refused to claim it. She leaned close, inhaling. There was no scent of rot. Instead, a faint metallic tang clung to the flesh, sharper than blood. Copper, she murmured. Not of this earth. Alchemical. She reached for a ritual blade displayed upon the wall, an ordinary priest's knife of obsidian. She compared it to the wound and shook her head. No, not obsidian. Not flint. The blade was forged. The priests exchanged fearful glances. Forged blades were rare, costly, and forbidden in certain rites. To use one in murder was blasphemy. Who among you keeps such a weapon? Isis asked, her voice low but resonant. None answered. Silence weighed like stone. Her eyes glinted. Then I will find it myself. She left them trembling and made her way deeper into the temple, to the archives where scrolls lay stacked in cedar chests. She commanded the scribes to bring forth the records of the priesthood, names, duties, possessions, lineages. Hours passed as Isis read. She traced the histories of each priest, noting debts, rivalries, oaths. She marked those who served Horus most fervently, those who had access to forbidden metals, those who bore scars. 3 names emerged from the scrolls like jackals circling prey. Nebhotep, a senior priest of Horus, known for his temper and his scarred hands. Paramhat, a wealthy scribe priest whose family imported metals from the Sinai. Taif, a young initiate, quiet but ambitious, rumored to covet higher rank. Isis set the scrolls aside. 3 men. 3 possible shadows. Yet she knew evidence alone was not enough. She would draw the truth from their own mouths. That evening she summoned them one by one. First came Nebhotep. His hands indeed bore the scars Isis had seen in vision. He bowed deeply, though uneasily. "You are loyal to Horus," Isis said. "Tell me, what loyalty had you to the priest who lies dead?" Nebhotep hesitated. "He served Ra. And Ra's priests have long dismissed Horus's power. They treated us as lesser, though Horus is rightful heir." "Did you envy him?" Isis asked. "I resented him," Nebhotep admitted, voice tight. "But resentment is not murder." She studied his face. His words were bold, but behind his eyes, a storm churned. Next came Paramhat. He was richly dressed for a priest, gold threads woven into his linen. His fingers glittered with rings, though none bore the falcon mark. "You have access to metals," Isis said. "Did you forge a blade of copper?" Paramhat smiled too quickly. "Yes, but only for ritual offerings. Not for blood. I would not dare." Her gaze lingered on his hands, smooth, unscarred. Not the hands of a killer, but perhaps the hands of one who supplied a weapon. Last came Tif, the youngest. His eyes darted nervously. His voice cracked when he spoke. I am honored to be summoned, lady." "You wear ambition like a cloak," Isis said. "Did ambition drive you to strike down one who stood above you?" Taif trembled. "No. I would never. I only wish to learn, to serve. Please, I am no killer." Isis said nothing. She dismissed him with a flick of her hand. When the 3 were gone, she sat in silence. Each man carried part of the truth, but none yet revealed the whole. She closed her eyes again, whispering an incantation. Slowly, the veil lifted in her mind. The vision returned. The sycamore, the scarred hand, the falcon ring. Yet now another detail emerged. The sound of chanting, low and rhythmic, a hymn not to Horus or Ra but to another, darker power. Her blood chilled. The hymn was one of Set. Isis opened her eyes, her heart steady but fierce. If Set's shadow lay upon this crime, the murder was not only sacrilege. It was conspiracy. The killing of a priest was only the beginning. Night fell heavy over Heliopolis, cloaking the temple in a veil of silence. Only the braziers burned, casting long shadows that licked the walls. Isis stood at the center of the Hall of Judgment, the 3 men seated before her on reed mats. The priests of Ra and Horus gathered at the edges, whispering nervously. No one dared leave, for Isis had decreed that the truth would be drawn this night. She raised her hand, and the whispers died. 3 men stand accused, Isis said. Her voice was low, yet it carried through stone as though the temple itself leaned to listen. But only one struck the killing blow. "We will not hide behind robes or titles. The Nile has drunk innocent blood, and it demands the truth." She began with Nebhotep, the scarred priest of Horus. "You bore resentment toward the dead. You bear the scars of a fighter. And in my vision, the killer's hand was scarred." Nebhotep lifted his chin. "Resentment is not guilt. My scars are the work of years, rituals, accidents, battles for Horus's honor. But I did not kill him." "Then why do you wear a falcon ring?" Isis asked. Nebhotep stiffened. His hand instinctively moved toward his robes, where indeed a gold ring glinted faintly. The falcon of Horus spread its wings across the band. Gasps spread among the priests. Nebhotep's jaw tightened. "Yes, I wear the falcon, as all senior priests of Horus do. But that does not prove I am a murderer. Would I not be a fool to wear the same ring seen in your vision? His words had a strange weight, both defensive and cunning. Isis did not reply. She simply marked his answers and turned to the next. Paramhat, the wealthy scribe priest, met her gaze coolly. You supplied copper, Isis said. A forbidden weapon was made. Tell me, who did you sell it to? I sell nothing, Paramhat said smoothly. The temple owns the metals. I only record what is used. Then who withdrew it last? He hesitated. The pause was brief, but for Isis it was enough. Speak, she commanded. It was Nebhotep, Paramhat admitted reluctantly. He claimed it was for a Horus rite. I dared not question him. He is my superior. All eyes turned to Nebhotep again. His face darkened like storm clouds. A lie, Nebhotep hissed. This man twists truth to save himself. But Isis lifted her hand, silencing the quarrel. She turned her gaze upon the last, Taif, the young initiate. His whole body trembled under her eyes. You are the least likely, Isis said. Yet sometimes the weakest hand strikes at shadows. Tell me, Tif, what hymn do you sing in your prayers? Taif's eyes widened. Hymns to Horus, great lady. Only Horus. Are you sure? Isis's voice was a whisper now, sharp as a blade. For when I cast my sight upon the grove, I heard chanting. A hymn not to Horus, but to Set. A ripple of fear tore through the hall. The name of Set, the god of chaos, betrayer of Osiris, eternal rival of Horus, spread like poison. Taif fell to his knees, hands shaking. No, I swear. I do not call upon Set. I would never betray Horus. Isis studied him in silence. His terror was real, yet terror did not prove innocence. Stand, she ordered. He obeyed, trembling. Isis turned back to the assembly. One of these men has not only killed but dared invoke the power of Set. This crime is not mortal. It is rebellion against the divine order. A murmur swelled. Some priests cried out in outrage, others in fear. If Set's hand was in this, the matter was far darker than the death of a single man. Isis raised both arms. The room fell silent once more. You will not hide behind lies, she said. I will strip away your masks. She stepped forward, her eyes burning with power. She drew a circle on the floor with her finger, whispering ancient words. The stone glowed faintly, lines of light forming a sacred seal. Each of you will stand within the circle, Isis declared. No lie can pass its boundary. Your Ka will betray you if your tongue deceives. The priests recoiled. The circle of Ma'at, truth made manifest, was feared even by gods. Nebhotep was the first to step forward. He crossed his arms and stood tall. Did you kill the priest of Ra? Isis asked. No, Nebhotep said firmly. The circle remained calm, its light steady. Did you take copper from the temple stores? Yes, he admitted after a pause. But not for murder. For ritual tools. It was my right. The circle glowed, confirming truth. Isis narrowed her eyes. Not guilty, perhaps, but far from innocent. Paramhat entered next. Did you forge a blade of copper? Yes, Paramhat said with a tremor. But at Nebhotep's command. I had no choice. The circle flickered, not falsehood, but half-truth. Isis's lips curved slightly. She had caught him. You had no choice? She pressed. Paramhat swallowed. You profited from it. I was paid in gold. I chose to look away. The circle glowed brighter, affirming. A murmur spread. Paramhat was guilty of aiding, if not killing. Finally, Taif approached. He could barely stand. Did you slay the priest of Ra? Isis asked. No. His voice cracked. The circle flared suddenly with violent light. The priest gasped. Isis's eyes sharpened. Did you call upon Set? Taif's lips trembled. I only listened to the hymn. I did not chant it. It was Nebhotep who taught me the words. The circle trembled, truth mixed with fear. All eyes swung to Nebhotep. He stood rigid, fury blazing in his face. Lies? He roared. This boy seeks to damn me. But Isis's gaze pierced him. You resent Ra's priests. You sought to elevate Horus. You ordered a blade of copper, invoked Set's hymn, and bound the victim's soul in silence. Nephotep's fists clenched. The circle burned brighter, forcing truth to the surface. He could no longer hide. Yes, he spat at last. His voice rang with venom. Yes, I killed him. And I would kill him again. Ra's priests have held Egypt too long. Horus is the rightful heir. Only through Set's strength could I silence the sun's arrogance. The hall erupted. Priests shouted, some cursing Nephotep, others recoiling in horror. Isis alone remained calm. She raised her hand, and silence fell once more. Truth has been spoken, she said coldly. But judgment is yet to come. Nephotep's face twisted with defiance. Judge me if you dare, goddess. But know this, the war between Horus and Ra is not mine alone. Others share my cause. Kill me and you will silence one voice. But the storm will rise again. Isis looked upon him with unshaken eyes. Then I will silence the storm. And with those words, she prepared the ritual that would unmask not only the killer, but the deeper conspiracy that whispered Set's name through Egypt's temples. The hall reeked of incense and fear. Nephotep's confession hung heavy in the air, yet Isis did not strike him down at once. She knew better. Confession was only the first thread. The whole tapestry of deceit had yet to be revealed. Bind him, Isis commanded. Priests rushed forward, wrapping linen cords around Nephotep's wrists and ankles. He struggled, spitting curses, but Isis's gaze alone held him still. You sought power through Set, she said. But Set never gives without taking. What did he promise you? Nephotep's lips curled. He promised me nothing, only strength. Strength enough to silence Ra's arrogance. Strength enough to lift Horus above all. Lies, Isis whispered. Her eyes narrowed, her voice weaving through the air like silk. You spoke Set's hymn, you bound the dead man's soul, and yet, you are not clever enough to veil your face from my sight. Someone gave you that spell. Someone greater. Nephotep's defiance faltered. He looked away. The priest gasped. Isis's words pierced deeper than any blade. You were not the hand of Set, she said softly. Only his pawn. Nephotep's silence confirmed her truth. She turned to the gathered priests. The murder of one priest was not the goal. It was the spark. A war between Horus and Ra. This was the true design. And who profits from war among gods? The priests whispered the name without daring to raise their eyes. Set. Isis's lips curved, not in triumph, but in grim certainty. Set's shadow grows bolder. He cannot strike Osiris again, so he seeks new wounds. He stirs envy in Horus's priests, arrogance in Ra's, and chaos spreads like fire. She returned to Nephotep. Who guided your hand? Speak, or I will strip the answer from your soul. Nephotep trembled. Sweat gleamed on his brow. At last he choked out, a voice came to me in dreams. It taught me the hymn, gave me the spell. I never saw the speaker's face, but his words burned with power. He told me the priest of Ra must fall, and Egypt would rise cleansed of weakness. A voice in dreams, Isis repeated. Her thoughts sharpened like a blade. Set himself walks through the corridors of sleep, whispering rebellion into willing ears. The hall fell deathly silent. Isis straightened, her eyes flashing like stars reflected on water. Then I will make Set's whispers betray him. She ordered Nephotep dragged to the grove where the murder had taken place. Priests followed in a fearful procession, torches hissing against the night wind. The sycamore loomed once more, its roots still dark with blood. Isis drew a circle around the tree with chalk of ground bone. Within it she placed Nephotep, bound and kneeling. She scattered herbs, frankincense, myrrh, crushed lotus, and lit them until the smoke curled high into the air. This grove was desecrated by blood and lies, she declared. Tonight it shall be consecrated with truth. Let the God who whispers reveal himself. She raised her arms and began to chant. Her voice swelled, ancient words vibrating through the air. The priests trembled as the night seemed to bend around her. The air thickened. Shadows deepened. The torches sputtered, though no wind blew. Nebhotep writhed within the circle, his eyes wide with terror. Then it came, a laugh, low and venomous, carried on the smoke. The priests fell to their knees. Some wept. Some covered their ears. From the shadows of the grove, a shape began to form, tall, broad, terrible. A beast's head, long ears, glowing eyes. The unmistakable figure of Set. But Isis did not falter. Her gaze met his, steady as the Nile. Brother of Osiris. Betrayer. Murderer, she said coldly. You think to walk again in Egypt unseen. But I see you. Set's form rippled, half shadow, half flame. You always see, Isis. But what will sight grant you? The gods grow weary of Ra's blinding pride. Horus hungers for his throne. And mortals crave power. I give them what they already desire. I need not strike, I only whisper. Isis's voice cut sharp. You whisper lies. You promised Nebhotep victory, but you would only devour him. Your gifts are chains, your promises ashes. Set laughed again, cruel and echoing. And yet still they come to me. Even your Horus will in time. At this, Isis's eyes blazed. She lifted her staff, striking it into the ground. The earth shuddered. The circle flared with brilliant light. Begone from this place, she commanded. By the name of Ra, by the tears of Nut, by the blood of Osiris, I banish you. Set's form shivered, breaking apart like smoke in wind. His laugh faded, though it lingered in the priest's bones. Silence fell. Nebhotep collapsed, gasping. His face was pale, his body drained. Isis looked down at him, her voice firm but not unkind. You were a fool, Nebhotep. You thought yourself strong, yet you were nothing but a vessel. Set used you to spill blood, to breed chaos. But now all Egypt knows his hand. You will live, long enough to bear witness to his deceit. The priests murmured in awe. Isis had not only exposed the killer but unmasked the greater enemy. But Isis knew the struggle was not finished. Set's laughter still echoed in her mind. He had tested Egypt, and though she had thwarted him this time, his whispers would return. She turned to the assembly. Justice has been unveiled, but judgment is yet to be done. Nebhotep's hand was guilty, but the crime was Set's design. We cannot kill chaos with death. We can only guard against it with truth. And with those words, Isis prepared the final act, the judgment that would teach both mortals and gods that no lie, no whisper, no shadow could outlast her light. The grove was still. The smoke of incense drifted away, carrying with it the last trace of Set's laughter. The priests, shaken but alive, turned their eyes toward Isis. In her calm presence, they felt both relief and dread, for though the shadow had been unmasked, judgment remained. Nebhotep knelt at the center of the glowing circle, bound in linen, his face pale as ash. He looked up at Isis, and though defiance still flickered in his eyes, it was tempered now by fear. You exposed me, he muttered, voice ragged. You showed them all. But you cannot undo what has been done. Blood has been spilled. The seed is sown. Horus and Ra's followers will never live in peace. Isis regarded him with quiet intensity. Peace is not sown in blood, Nebhotep. Chaos is. You mistook Set's whispers for your own voice. But Set never gives strength without stealing more in return. He used you. He would have left you hollow, discarded, forgotten. Nebhotep lowered his head. For the first time, shame flickered in him. The priests surrounding the grove looked to Isis expectantly. Some cried out for death. Kill him. Spill his blood as he spilled another's. Others demanded exile, or that his ka be bound in silence forever. But Isis raised her hand. The voices stilled. You ask for vengeance, she said. But vengeance feeds Set. You ask for silence, but silence hides truth. I will not bind Egypt in more of what has already been spilled. I will teach. She stepped forward, her staff gleaming in the torchlight. She drew upon the ground a second circle, wider than the first. Within it she inscribed symbols of Ma'at, feathers, scales, and the sun's eye. This circle, Isis declared, is not for punishment, but for truth's weight. Let his soul be measured, not by my hand, but by the law of the cosmos. At her gesture, the priests brought forth the scales of Maat, golden, delicate, sacred. One pan held the feather of truth. The other would hold Nebhotep's heart, once drawn from him by spell. Nebhotep's breath came quick. His eyes darted wildly. No, no, lady, not the weighing. Spare me that. Isis's voice was calm but unyielding. If your heart is lighter than the feather, your soul will find peace in the field of reeds. If heavier, Amit will devour it. Justice will not be mine, it will be eternal. The priests gasped, for few had seen the rite performed outside the afterlife. To weigh a man's heart before his death was no small act. It was divine judgment brought into the living world. Isis began the chant. Her words curled through the air like threads of silk and fire. She reached toward Nebhotep's chest, her fingers glowing. Slowly, impossibly, his heart emerged, red, luminous, beating still. She placed it upon the scales. The grove fell silent, every eye fixed on the balance. For a moment, it wavered. The feather quivered. The heart sank lower. Lower still. The priest gasped. Amit's shadow seemed to stir in the smoke. But then, just as the pan neared its fall, it stopped. The scales steadied. The heart lay heavy, but not beyond redemption. Isis's eyes softened. Your soul is stained, Nebhotep, but not lost. You are guilty of pride, envy, and bloodshed. Yet you were deceived. You were weak, not wicked. Nebhotep trembled, tears spilling down his face. Then I live? You will live, Isis said, but not as you were. You will serve penance in silence. Your voice, once used to chant Setsim, will be taken from you. Never again will you speak lies or truth. You will serve the temples in labor alone, nameless, voiceless, until your final breath. Only then will your heart face judgment once more. Her words echoed through the grove. The priests shivered at her mercy, for it was merciful, yet merciless in its weight. Isis touched Nebhotep's lips. His cry caught in his throat, strangled into nothing. From that moment forth, no sound would pass his mouth. The priests dragged him away, trembling but alive. He would not die, but neither would he lead. His fate was worse than swift death, an existence stripped of ambition, humbled into service. When he was gone, Isis turned back to the assembly. Let this be known, she said, her voice carrying like the Nile in flood. Set cannot strike openly, so he whispers. He tempts with pride, with power, with the promise of change. But his gifts bind, his whispers poison. Egypt must guard its heart as each of us must. For the gods may watch, but even the gods are not safe from envy. Her gaze swept over them, fierce and gentle all at once. Remember, truth is heavier than blood, and no lie can live in my presence. The priests bowed low, pressing their foreheads to the earth. Some wept. Some whispered prayers of gratitude. But all understood, a lesson had been carved into their souls. As dawn broke, light poured over the temple. The sycamore gleamed gold in the rising sun, no longer stained with shadow. The air felt lighter, as though balance had been restored. Isis stood at the edge of the grove, her veil fluttering in the morning breeze. She looked to the east, where the sun rose in its eternal cycle, and to the west, where shadows retreated. The murder had been solved, but more than that, a truth had been spoken. Egypt's order had wavered, but not broken. And Isis, as always, had stood between chaos and harmony, weaving justice from sorrow. Her task was never done. Set would whisper again. Darkness would rise again. But as long as she walked the earth, truth would answer. And so, the story of the first murder in Egypt ended not with vengeance, but with wisdom. For Isis had not only solved a crime, she had reminded gods and mortals alike that even in blood and shadow, the light of truth endures. If you find this story intriguing, subscribe for more mythic tales that were never meant to be forgotten.